Something wasn't right with Emily. I had started noticing it months ago, small, insignificant things that, on their own, could be brushed off as nothing. The way she checked her phone just a little too quickly when I entered the room. The way she left the house with a neutral expression, but came back looking different, lighter, as if she had stepped into another world when she was out, one I had no access to. She had started dressing differently, too. Not for me, that much I knew. It wasn't the kind of effort a woman makes for her husband after over a decade of marriage. It was something else. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just being paranoid. After all, I had never been the jealous type. I wasn't the kind of man who hovered over his wife's phone or questioned every time she stepped out of the house. Emily had freedom, more than most women I knew. I had never given her a reason to feel caged. So why did I feel like something was slipping through my fingers? Then came Daniel. He had been working for us for nearly 3 years. A private driver, always on time, always professional. The kind of man who knew his place. At least that's what I had thought. He was good at his job, barely spoke unless spoken to. At first, I hadn't paid much attention to him. He was just another employee, someone whose name I barely registered most days. But Emily had started calling him more and more. It had been gradual, so much so that I almost didn't catch it. Before, she would either drive herself or use a ride service if she needed to go somewhere while I was busy. Now it was always Daniel. "I'll have Daniel take me," she would say casually, as if it meant nothing. It started as just a few trips, doctor's appointments, lunch with friends. Then it was everything. A last-minute errand? Daniel. A shopping trip? Daniel. A weekend with her sister? Daniel drove her all the way. And when she was home, she would mention him. Subtly. Little remarks, nothing too obvious. A joke about how he was always serious. A comment about how reliable he was. A casual, "He's really quite funny once you get to know him." I started paying attention. The first time I caught her looking at him, it wasn't the kind of glance you give your driver. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. A flicker of something in her eyes, something that made my stomach tighten. I didn't like it, and I don't ignore my instincts. That's when I decided to do something about it. I had the car wired. Not video, just audio, small enough to go unnoticed, but clear enough to catch every word spoken inside. A simple recording device, voice-activated. It was easy. I didn't even have to ask someone else to do it. A quick installation, tucked into the dashboard. At first, I hesitated to even listen to the recordings. I almost convinced myself that I was being ridiculous, that I was invading my own wife's privacy for no reason. I kept telling myself that I'd play them back and hear nothing. Just meaningless small talk, maybe a little forced politeness, but nothing more. I was wrong. The first recording was mostly quiet. Just the sound of the car engine, the occasional shuffle of movement, the faint hum of the radio. Then her voice. Soft. Amused. "I can't stop thinking about yesterday. About you." I stopped breathing. A pause. A deep inhale, then a low voice, Daniel's. "You know we shouldn't be doing this. But I can't stay away from you." My hands clenched into fists. I forced myself to keep listening. Emily laughed. A quiet, intimate sound I hadn't heard from her in years. She sounded happy. I could hear the smile in her voice, the playfulness in her tone. "I don't even feel guilty anymore," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel let out a breath, almost a groan. "You should," he muttered. "Why?" "It's not like he pays attention. He's always working, always busy. He barely even notices when I'm gone." A sharp, bitter taste filled my mouth. I had heard enough. I yanked the headphones off and stared at my desk, breathing heavily, my mind racing. My pulse pounded so hard I could feel it in my skull. So this was what I had become. A man who worked too much, who barely noticed his wife. A fool too blind to see what was happening right in front of him. Emily, the woman I had loved, trusted, provided for. The woman I had built a life with. She had been sneaking around behind my back, whispering sweet nothings to the man I paid to drive her around like some second-rate romance novel. Disgust curled in my gut. This wasn't sadness. This wasn't heartbreak. Those were weak emotions, ones that might have mattered if she had shown even an ounce of guilt, an ounce of hesitation. But she hadn't. She had sat in that car and laughed, mocked me, justified herself like she had done nothing wrong. I wasn't heartbroken. I was furious. A rage unlike anything I had ever felt before surged through me, blinding, all-consuming. She had no idea, no clue that I knew. Not yet, but she would. And when she did, she would regret every single word. She would regret everything. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my office, the dim glow of the desk lamp casting long shadows across the walls, my fingers gripping the edge of the desk so tightly my knuckles turned white. The headset lay in front of me, still connected to my laptop, as if daring me to press play again. I didn't need to. Every word was already burned into my mind. I don't even feel guilty anymore. It's not like he pays attention. It played in a loop, over and over, taunting me, turning the anger in my chest into something heavier, something darker. For years, I had built a life where I thought betrayal wasn't even a possibility. I wasn't naive. I knew what happened in other marriages. I had seen friends go through it, heard the stories. Men who came home to find their wives in bed with another man. Men who ignored the signs until it was too late. I'd always thought, that won't be me. But here I was. My wife had cheated on me with the man I had hired, the man I paid. The insult was just as cutting as the betrayal itself. I exhaled slowly, staring at the headset, willing myself to think. There were things I needed to do, steps I needed to take. But first, I had to act normal. I couldn't give anything away. Not yet. I pushed back from the desk and stood, rolling my shoulders to loosen the tension coiling in my muscles. The anger hadn't left, not even close, but I shoved it down, buried it deep. Emily couldn't know. Not until I was ready. When I finally walked into the bedroom, the house was quiet. The kind of stillness that made everything feel unnatural, as if something had shifted beneath the surface. Emily was already in bed, curled up on her side, one leg tucked under the blanket, her breathing even. She looked peaceful, innocent, like the woman I had married. It was a lie. She stirred slightly as I moved around the room, her eyelids fluttering before she let out a sleepy murmur. "You were up late," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. I forced a smile as I pulled off my watch and set it on the dresser. "Yeah, work stuff," I said casually, my voice betraying nothing. She hummed in response, shifting slightly under the sheets. "You need to stop working so much," she added, already drifting back to sleep. I stared at her for a long moment. It was almost laughable. She had spent God knows how many hours wrapped around another man, whispering things to him that should have been meant for me. And yet here, she was acting like the concerned wife. I felt the anger tighten in my chest again, hot and suffocating. I turned away before it could show on my face. The next morning, I played my role perfectly. I woke up before Emily, got dressed like any other day, sat at the kitchen table sipping my coffee as she walked in, still in her robe, stretching lazily like she didn't have a care in the world. She leaned down to kiss my cheek. I let her. "Are you busy today?" she asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "Yeah," I lied, flipping through my phone like I wasn't memorizing every single one of her movements. "Meetings all day." She sighed dramatically. "You work too much." The words might have meant something once. Now they were just noise. She sat across from me, cradling her cup in both hands, and for a split second, I wondered how long she had been lying to me. Had it started months ago? A year? Longer? I didn't ask. I just nodded like I wasn't thinking about the way she had laughed in the car, the way she had whispered to another man. A few minutes later, she stood, brushing a hand through her hair. "I need to run a few errands today," she said. "Daniel's taking me." Of course, he was. I took another sip of coffee, letting the moment stretch. "Anything special?" I asked, keeping my tone even. She shook her head. "Just shopping. Maybe lunch with Grace later." Lie. I had checked the recordings. She had used Grace as an excuse more than once. It was one of her go-to covers. I gave her a slow nod. "Sounds nice." If she noticed anything in my voice, she didn't show it. She just smiled, grabbed her phone, and left the kitchen. I followed her. Not physically, I wasn't that kind of man, but I had already set up a remote connection to the car's audio. As soon as she got in, I'd be listening. And I did. I heard her get in the back seat, the door closing with a soft thud. Then Daniel's voice. "Morning." Casual. Unbothered. "Hey, you," Emily murmured, her voice softer now. Different. I clenched my jaw. They made small talk at first. Normal things. Then the car pulled away, and Emily lowered her voice. I missed you. Daniel exhaled. You just saw me yesterday. You know what I mean, she said playfully. A pause. A beat of silence thick enough to choke on. Then his voice lower now. He's home more often lately. Yeah, she admitted. It's making things harder. Harder? I nearly crushed the coffee cup in my hand. You think he knows anything? Daniel asked. Emily let out a soft chuckle. No, he's completely oblivious. He barely even looks at me when he gets home. A slow burn of rage crawled up my spine. Oblivious? That was what she thought. That I was too stupid to see what was right in front of me. Daniel hummed thoughtfully. Maybe we should. The recording cut out for a second. My hands tightened into fists. Emily's voice returned, quieter now. Not yet. I don't want to ruin things too soon. Too soon? What the hell did that mean? They weren't just having an affair. They were planning something. Something bigger. My pulse pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I had been prepared to deal with the betrayal. Prepared for the rage, the disgust, the hatred. But this was something else entirely. I had walked into this thinking I was dealing with a wife who had made a mistake. A disgusting, unforgivable mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. Now, I wasn't so sure. Now, I had to find out what they were planning. And when I did, there wouldn't be a place in this world where Emily could hide from me. Betrayal is an ugly thing. It doesn't just strike once and fade. It lingers, growing roots inside you, poisoning every thought, every breath. I had listened to my wife's voice, mocking, dismissive, plotting, and something inside me had shifted. This wasn't just infidelity. This was something worse. Emily and Daniel weren't just sneaking around behind my back. They were waiting. For what? I didn't know yet. But when she said, not yet, I don't want to ruin things too soon, I knew this wasn't over. They had a plan, and I had a choice. I could storm into the house, confront her right now, demand the truth, let my anger burn everything to the ground. But that would be giving her too much credit. It would let her play the victim, let her twist things around, let her make excuses. No, she didn't deserve that. She deserved to lose everything. For the next week, I played my role. I acted the part of the clueless husband, the one she thought she had wrapped around her finger. I went to work, came home, smiled when necessary. I didn't touch her. I didn't ask where she had been. I didn't question why she was always checking her phone, why she left the room to take certain calls, why she was suddenly so attentive when she had spent the past year acting like my presence was an afterthought. She was trying to cover her tracks. I let her, because the more she thought she was safe, the sloppier she would get. And I wanted everything. I had more recordings now. Every ride she took with Daniel, every conversation, every whispered confession. I listened to them all. Some of them made me sick. The way she spoke to him, the way she teased him, the way she made it sound like I was some absent fool who didn't care about her anymore. You're the only one who really sees me, Daniel. I think about you all the time. It's getting harder to hide this. I clenched my jaw through every second of it. She thought she was in control. She thought I was blind. I wasn't. I was watching her. I was listening. And soon, I would be the one holding all the cards. On Friday night, I put the first part of my plan into motion. Emily was in the shower when I took her phone. I had learned her passcode months ago. She wasn't careful. She never thought she had to be. I opened her messages first. Grace, her sister, a few other friends, and then Daniel. The messages had been deleted. Of course they had. But people like Emily always made mistakes. I checked her recently deleted messages, and there they were, pages of them. He's been working late again. I can slip out for a few hours. Are you sure? I don't want you to get caught. Don't worry. He never pays attention. I exhaled slowly through my nose. There were dozens of them. Plans, times, locations. Some of them were just short, teasing messages. I can still feel you from last night. You're bad. I love it. Disgust curled in my stomach. Then, near the bottom, I found something else. A different kind of message. We should talk about next steps. Not yet. I don't want to rush things. We can't wait forever. It'll be easier if we do it sooner. I know. Let's talk in person. I stared at the words, my grip tightening on the phone. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning something. What? I didn't know yet, but I had a feeling it wasn't just about sneaking around. There was something bigger at play, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. The next morning, I followed her. She thought I had gone into the office for a meeting. I'd even kissed her goodbye like nothing was wrong. But instead of heading to work, I waited. At exactly 10:15 a.m., she left the house. Daniel's car was parked a block away. She didn't call him to pull up. No, she walked him, like they were careful, like they had rules. I followed at a distance, keeping far enough back that she wouldn't notice. They didn't go to a hotel. They didn't go to some romantic getaway. They went to a house I didn't recognize. Emily let herself in with a key. Daniel followed. I stayed outside, watching from my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. This wasn't just a fling. This was established. She had a key. She had an entire life outside of me. I sat there for nearly an hour, letting the weight of it settle in. The rage I felt before had been sharp, immediate. This was different. This was cold. This was calculation. And if they thought I was going to sit back and let them play me for a fool, they were dead wrong. I wasn't just going to confront her. I wasn't just going to end it. I was going to destroy her. That night, I acted normal. Emily came home just after 5, carrying shopping bags. Her alibi, no doubt. She kissed me when she walked in, the scent of expensive perfume clinging to her skin. I smiled. "You're in a good mood," she said, setting the bags down. "Long day," I replied easily. "Glad it's the weekend." She beamed. "Me too." And just like that, she slipped into the routine, pretending like everything was fine. Like she hadn't spent the afternoon wrapped around another man. Like she wasn't plotting something behind my back. I let her think she was winning. Let her think I was still blind. But in reality, she had already lost. She just didn't know it yet. The hardest part of revenge isn't the planning. It isn't even the execution. It's the waiting. The slow, agonizing patience it takes to let the truth unfold piece by piece. To keep your emotions locked away while the people who have betrayed you go on, blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit them. But I was willing to wait, because when I struck, I wasn't just going to hurt them. I was going to end them. I spent the weekend gathering information. Emily thought I was busy working on emails or watching football, but I was studying her every move. The phone call she stepped outside to take. The way she checked her reflection twice before leaving the house. The constant glances at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I started noticing things I had ignored before, like how she never left any receipts behind. No crumpled papers in her purse. No leftover shopping bags that weren't accounted for. She was meticulous, but not enough. No one is perfect, and I had time. On Monday morning, I checked the car's audio again. The night before, I had wiped the last recording, erasing any evidence that I had been listening. The last thing I needed was for Emily to get suspicious. I sat at my desk with my coffee, popped in my earbuds, and pressed play. The recording started with the usual sounds. The hum of the car engine, the shuffle of Emily sliding into the seat. Then her voice. "I dreamed about you last night." Daniel chuckled. "Oh yeah? Was it a good dream?" "Very." But then I woke up next to him. My grip on the coffee cup tightened until my fingers ached. Daniel sighed. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Emily hesitated. "We don't have to wait much longer." Silence. Daniel's voice dropped. "You're sure?" Emily exhaled. "Yes. But we have to be careful. I don't want to rush things." "You said that last time." "I know, but I can't just walk away from this without making sure I get what I deserve." "And what do you deserve?" Emily laughed softly. "Everything." The conversation shifted after that. Small talk, complaints about traffic, but I had heard enough. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning something. And now I knew one thing for sure. Emily wasn't planning on leaving quietly. She wanted more. She wanted everything. That night, I started digging. I already had access to her phone, but now I needed more. Her emails, her bank statements, her personal files. It didn't take much effort. Emily had always been careless with security, trusting that I wouldn't ever have a reason to look. I spent hours combing through her accounts, sifting through years of financial transactions. Most of it was normal. Then I found it. A separate bank account, one I hadn't known about. It had been opened 2 years ago, right around the time she had started requesting Daniel as her driver more often. The balance? Nearly $200,000. Money she had moved from our joint account, little by little, over time. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, my pulse pounding. This wasn't just an affair. This was a setup. She was getting ready to leave, and she was making sure she had more than enough to do it comfortably. I clenched my jaw. You think you're smart, Emily? You think I wouldn't notice? You think you can walk away from this and take everything I built with you? No, that's not how this ends. Tuesday morning, I made my first move. I called my lawyer. Not to file for divorce. Not yet. That would be too easy. Instead, I had him start the process of quietly transferring assets, freezing accounts, ensuring that when a moment came, Emily would have nothing. By the time she realized what was happening, it would be too late. Next, I paid a visit to a friend of mine, someone who specialized in security systems. I had my entire house wired, cameras installed where Emily wouldn't notice, hidden microphones placed in key rooms. If she was planning something behind my back, I wanted to hear every word. That evening, Emily came home late. I was sitting in the living room, pretending to scroll through my phone when she walked in. She smelled different, not like her usual perfume. Like him. She smiled at me. Long day. I forced a small chuckle. Yeah, you. She set her purse down, stretching like she hadn't just spent the day wrapped around another man. Exhausting. Liar. She walked past me, her fingers brushing my shoulder as she moved toward the kitchen. I turned my head slightly, watching her. I had loved this woman once. I had trusted her. But now, she was just the enemy. And she had no idea I was about to take everything from her. That night, while she slept, I checked the house cameras. She had gone into the guest bathroom before bed, something she never did. I switched to the footage. There she was standing by the sink, her phone in her hand. I turned up the audio. Her voice was low, cautious. He doesn't suspect anything. A pause. Daniel's voice over the phone. You're sure? Yes. I'll talk to the lawyers soon, but I need to wait for the right moment. I just don't want to get caught. You won't. Just be patient. We'll get everything we deserve. Something cold settled in my chest. This wasn't just about running away. She was planning to take me down, ruin me, steal everything I had worked for, and she thought she could win. I stared at the screen and my wife's reflection in the mirror as she smirked to herself before leaving the bathroom. She was playing a game, but she didn't realize I had already won. Patience was never my strong suit, but revenge required restraint. I had everything I needed, recordings of their conversations, evidence of her secret bank account, video proof that she was planning something with Daniel behind my back. But the moment I confronted her, the game would be over. And I wasn't done playing. Not yet. The next morning, I acted like nothing had changed. Emily got up early, stretching lazily as she walked into the kitchen. She gave me a tired smile as she poured herself a cup of coffee, completely unaware that I had spent half the night listening to her plan my downfall. Any meetings today? She asked casually. I took a sip of my coffee, shaking my head. Nope. Working from home. Her lips pressed together for a brief second, so quick I almost missed it. She had been planning something. And now, I had just thrown a wrench into her little schedule. Good. She leaned against the counter, phone in her hand, scrolling through messages, probably Daniel, wondering why she hadn't left yet. I might go shopping later, she said, voice light, rehearsed. I need a few things for the house. I kept my expression neutral. Daniel driving you? She hesitated. Yeah, he's already scheduled for the afternoon. Of course, he was. I let my eyes linger on her for a moment longer than necessary, watching for any sign that she suspected something. Nothing. She still thought I was blind. Perfect. At 1:30 p.m., she left. I didn't follow her, not physically. I didn't need to. I already had the car wired, and now, thanks to the cameras, I could track her every move. She wasn't going shopping. She was going to him. I tapped into the car's audio as soon as she got in. The door shut, and there was silence for a second before Daniel spoke. Everything good? Emily sighed, shifting in her seat. Yeah, he's home today, though. Daniel let out a quiet breath. That's risky. I know, but I have to be careful. I think he's been stressed lately. I don't want him getting suspicious. Too late for that, sweetheart. Daniel was silent for a moment before he spoke again. You talked to the lawyer yet? Emily hesitated. Not yet. I need to figure out the best way to do it without him seeing it coming. My jaw clenched. So, she wanted to blindside me, take me for everything, and walk away like I was nothing. I had to resist the urge to smash my fist against the desk. Let her think she had the upper hand. Let her think she was winning. She was walking straight into my trap. That night, I made my next move. While Emily slept, I took her phone again. Only this time, I did more than just check her messages. I installed tracking software. Every call, every text, every location sent straight to me. Now, there would be no secrets. And just as I was about to put the phone back, I saw something new. An email from a divorce attorney. My heart pounded as I clicked it open, skimming through the contents. Mrs. Reynolds, as per our last conversation, I have drafted the initial paperwork for the divorce proceedings. Once you're ready, we can proceed with filing. Let me know when you'd like to move forward. She hadn't sent a response yet, but she was close. She was getting ready to pull the trigger. I inhaled slowly, my mind racing. She thought she was being smart. She thought she could play this game and come out on top. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. I slipped the phone back on her nightstand and climbed into bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, the weight of my fury pressing down on my chest. She wanted a war. She was about to get one. The next morning, I played my role to perfection. Emily kissed me goodbye, smiling as she grabbed her purse and phone. She was leaving early, which meant she was meeting him. I waited until she was gone, then tapped into the tracker, watching as her location popped up on my screen. A hotel. Not the same house she had gone to last time. They were switching things up, trying to be careful. I smirked bitterly. Too bad for them. I was always one step ahead. I let them have their little rendezvous. Let them believe they were safe. Then I made my next move. At exactly 1 p.m., I walked into my bank and froze her joint accounts. Every last dollar. Emily wouldn't notice right away. She had her secret stash, after all. But soon, when she tried to access anything connected to me, she'd realize she no longer had control. Step 1 complete. Next, I call my lawyer. I want to start the process, I said calmly. Divorce? Yes, but not yet. First, I want a full investigation into my wife's finances. I need to know where every dollar is going. There was a pause, then a slow exhale. You think she's hiding something? I let out a cold chuckle. I know she is. Find it. I ended the call and leaned back in my chair, exhaling. The pieces were moving. Emily thought she was about to win. She had no idea the walls were already closing in around her. And soon, she would lose everything. That night, Emily came home late. She tried to hide it, walking in with a casual smile, acting like nothing was wrong. But I knew where she had been. I knew who she had been with. And when she leaned down to kiss me, I let her. Because soon, that fake little smile would be wiped off her face for good. She was about to realize something very, very important. You don't betray me and walk away unscathed. I was going to take her down. And when I was done, she wouldn't have anything left. Betrayal changes a man. Not just the way he thinks. Not just the way he moves. It changes everything. I used to be the kind of husband who trusted his wife without question. The kind who worked long hours, believing I was building something for both of us. The kind who assumed love and loyalty went hand in hand. Not anymore. That man was dead. And the man who had taken his place? He was about to ruin her. Emily came home that night with the same fake smile, the same rehearsed softness in her voice. Long day, she asked as she set her purse down, stretching like she hadn't spent the afternoon tangled up with another man in some cheap hotel. I looked up from my laptop, forcing my expression to remain neutral. Yeah, you, she yawned. Exhausting. I ran so many errands today. Liar. I nodded, pretending to be absorbed in my work, watching her from the corner of my eye. She walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone, probably checking messages from Daniel. I already knew what they said. I had been reading them all day. That night, while she slept, I checked her bank account. The secret one, the one she thought I didn't know about. The balance had dropped. $20,000 had been withdrawn. I stared at the transaction, my mind piecing together the puzzle. She was moving the money, preparing for something, probably setting up another account, somewhere harder to trace. I smirked. She thought she was careful. She thought she was ahead of me. She had no idea I had already started dismantling her life. I clicked a few buttons, accessing the financial controls I had put in place that morning. Then, with one final keystroke, I froze that account too. Every dollar she thought she had, gone. Let's see how she handled that. The next morning, Emily left early. She thought I was still asleep when she kissed my cheek and whispered, "I'll see you later." I wasn't asleep. I was wide awake, waiting for her to walk out the door so I could watch everything unfold. I logged into my tracking system, watching her location pop up as she drove straight to Daniel. Not the house, not the hotel, a bank. I nearly laughed. She was going to check the account, and in a few minutes, she was going to realize she had nothing. I leaned back in my chair, coffee in hand, and waited. It took about 20 minutes before I got the first sign of panic. A text popped up on my monitoring feed. "Something's wrong. My account is frozen." I smirked. A minute later, another text. "What do you mean? How?" "I don't know. I tried to withdraw some cash, and they said the account was locked. I need to figure out what happened." Shit. What if he knows? I imagine the way her stomach must have dropped when she read that. I imagine the way her face must have twisted in worry, her mind racing, trying to figure out if I had caught on. I wasn't going to give her an answer. Not yet. I wanted her to stew in it, to wonder, to panic. She came home earlier than usual that night. Her smile was gone. Her expression was tight, careful, like she was testing the air for any signs that I knew. I didn't say anything at first, just kept my focus on my laptop like I had no idea what she had spent the day doing. She hesitated for a second, then cleared her throat. "Hey, something weird happened today." I looked up, feigning confusion. "Weird how?" She bit her lip, hesitating. I think there was some kind of mistake with the bank. One of my accounts got frozen." I furrowed my brows, keeping my voice casual. "That's strange. Did you call them?" "Yeah. They wouldn't tell me much." "Huh." I shrugged. "Banks screw things up all the time. I'm sure it'll get sorted." Her eyes scanned my face, searching for any hint of suspicion. I gave her nothing. After a moment, she forced a small smile. "Yeah, probably." She turned away, but I caught the tension in her shoulders, the slight stiffness in her movements. She was nervous. Good. That was just the beginning. The next morning, I set the next phase of my plan in motion. I called my lawyer. "It's time," I said, my voice cold. "Time for what?" "To make sure she never sees a dime of my money again." I walked him through everything. The affair, the secret bank accounts, the recordings, the messages. "I want to make sure she walks away with nothing," I finished. My lawyer let out a low whistle. "You're not messing around." "No," I said. "I'm not." There was a pause, then a quiet chuckle. "I'll get started right away. By the time she figures out what's happening, she won't even have enough money to buy a cup of coffee." "Perfect." I ended the call and exhaled slowly, staring at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. Emily thought she had won. She thought she had everything planned out. But by the end of this, she wouldn't have a damn thing left. That evening, I got home late. Emily was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone, her face pale. She looked up as I walked in, her expression unreadable. "You okay?" I asked, my tone neutral. She hesitated. "Yeah, just tired." Liar. She wasn't tired. She was unraveling. She just didn't know how much further she had left to fall. I gave her a small smile and walked past her, heading into my office. Tomorrow, I would hit her with the next blow, the one she wouldn't see coming. Because tomorrow, I would take away Daniel. And once she had nothing left, that's when I'd tell her I knew, and watch her break. Betrayal has a rhythm, a pattern. At first, it's thrilling for the betrayer, an intoxicating secret they carry like a prize, believing they are untouchable, believing they are smarter than the one they're deceiving. Then comes the arrogance. They start slipping, getting comfortable, underestimating the person they think they've fooled. And then, when the truth begins to tighten around their neck like a noose, comes the panic. I was watching Emily unravel in real time. The past few days have been a slow descent into fear for her. First, the frozen account. Then, the realization that she was losing control. I could see the shift in her demeanor, the tension in her movements, the way she checked her phone more frequently, the fake smile she plastered onto her face when she looked at me. She was drowning, and she had no idea I was the one holding her under. The morning of the final blow, I made my next move. It was time to take Daniel off the board. Emily still had no idea that I had access to all of her messages. She still thought she was being careful, that her secrets were safe. So when she sent Daniel a text that morning, "We need to talk. He's acting different. I'm worried." I was already 3 steps ahead. While Emily was out running errands, I made my way to Daniel. Finding him wasn't hard. I had already traced his home address, his habits, the places he spent his time when he wasn't chauffeuring my wife around like a lovesick teenager. I didn't bother with intimidation or threats. I didn't have to, because Daniel had everything to lose. The man wasn't wealthy. He wasn't some mastermind. He was just a fool who got caught up in something bigger than himself, thinking he could play in a world he didn't belong to. And I was about to rip him out of it. I walked into the small bar where he was having a drink, my presence so unexpected that when he looked up and saw me standing there, his face went ghostly pale. "Mr. Reynolds," he stammered, setting his glass down a little too quickly. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. "Daniel." His throat bobbed. Is something wrong?" I smiled, a slow, knowing smile, and then I slid my phone across the table, pressing play. Emily's voice filled the small space between us. "I don't even feel guilty anymore." Daniel flinched. Then his own voice followed. "You know we shouldn't be doing this, but I can't stay away from you." I watched him closely as realization dawned in his eyes. He knew. He knew he was screwed. "Here's the thing, Daniel," I said smoothly, keeping my tone conversational. "I don't give a damn about what my wife thinks she's entitled to. But you," I tilted my head, "you're a different story." He swallowed hard. "Listen," I cut him off. "Save it. I don't need your excuses. I just need you to understand something." I leaned in slightly, lower my voice. "You're done." He blinked rapidly. You're done working for me. You're done talking to my wife. You're done being anywhere near my life." I let the words sink in. "And if you ever think about crossing me again, if you ever send her another message, if I ever hear your name again," I smiled, but it was cold, "I will make sure you lose everything. Your job, your savings, your ability to find work anywhere in this city. You won't be able to get hired to scrub toilets." Daniel's breathing was shallow. "I didn't mean for any of this to." I held up a hand. "I don't care. What I care about is that you disappear." He exhaled shakily, nodding. Okay, I understand." I stood up, sliding my phone back into my pocket. "Good. And just for good measure, I leaned in one last time. You were never competition for me, Daniel," I murmured. "She was just using you. You were just the easy option." I saw the truth land like a punch to his gut. Then, without another word, I walked out. That evening, I waited. I knew Emily would reach out to Daniel. And sure enough, just after dinner, I saw her sneak off into the guest bathroom again, phone in hand. She sent a message. "Where are you? You haven't responded all day." No reply. She waited a few minutes, then sent another. "Are you okay?" Still nothing. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, "Daniel, what's going on?" Silence. I watched as she stared at her phone, her breathing quickening, her grip tightening. Her lifeline had just vanished, and she had no idea why. By the time she came back into the bedroom that night, she was visibly shaken. She climbed into bed quietly, her back turned to me. I pretended not to notice, but I knew what she was thinking. Her plan was falling apart, and she had no control over it. Good, because the best part was still to come. The next morning, I set everything into motion. Emily woke up to a text from her lawyer. "Your accounts are inaccessible. Your assets are frozen. We need to discuss this immediately." Her sharp inhale filled the room. I watched, half hidden behind my laptop, as she sat up in bed, gripping her phone like a lifeline. She scrambled to check her banking app. Nothing. She checked her secret account. Gone. Her breath came faster now, panic flickering across her face. Then, she tried calling Daniel. No answer. I had made sure of that. She tried again, and again. Still nothing. I watched her hands shake as she clutched her phone, her world collapsing around her. Then she looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something in her expression I hadn't seen before. Fear. She knew. She didn't know how much I knew, but she knew enough. I let the silence stretch between us, the weight of her crumbling plans pressing down on her. Then, finally, I set my laptop aside and stood up. Emily flinched slightly as I walked toward her, but I didn't stop. I leaned down, my hands bracing the bed on either side of her, my face inches from hers. "You look stressed," I murmured. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I smiled. Slow, cold. Then, I leaned even closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Did you really think you could outplay me?" Her breath caught. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She just froze. And in that moment, I knew she had lost everything. And now, it was time for her to break.